Good afternoon. Thank you all for joining us today. I run a planning studio for Skidmore Owings Merrill, and I oversee planning in our London office, Shanghai office, Chicago office. We also have planning in San Francisco and New York. And I spend a tremendous amount of time with large-scale complex problems, mostly dealing with emerging cities and global migration. And all of us, a very creative group of young people working with me, spend a tremendous amount of time collaborating on very complex issues, mostly dealing with cities. But what we felt was the flip side of that coin was the larger environment. And we see so often in this field people putting boundaries or borders around the property they own, or a governmental boundary, or some kind of jurisdictional boundary that prevents people from thinking larger thoughts about the larger ecosystems. So today I wondered if we could imagine that there are no borders. No borders between cities, no borders between counties, no borders between states or provinces, and no borders between countries. I'd like to imagine that there are no borders today because we're in a thirsty world with tremendous global population increasing at an alarming rate, maybe as much as 1 billion people every decade. With strong urban migration and water not spread evenly across the world, we have a tremendous water issue. So today, I want to focus on the Great Lakes, which happens to be 95,000 square miles of surface fresh water, 20% of the world's fresh water, the largest single collection of fresh water in the world. Over 40% of the fresh water for North America. And yet we found that there's very little governing the protection or restoration or future of this amazing gift we've been given. So let's imagine today there are no borders. Now, we have a whole 18 minutes, so I want to take you on a trip. We're going to go on a brief vacation. I really want you to close your eyes and imagine yourself at the edge of a Great Lake. You all know it, it's close by here. You're on a bluff looking out over a sandy beach, and beyond that is a lake. Clear blue water that stretches forever. So wide is this lake, you don't see the other side. Clear water, and the only horizon is a faint white atmospheric line where the sky meets the lake. This is a familiar view for you if you know the Great Lakes. You can breathe that fresh air and you can hear that quiet lapping. It's not a sea, it's a lake. But think how lucky you are to have this view of a lake so big you can't see the other side. Now, if you come back, vacation's over, did you see something that looks sort of like this? Sandy beaches, calm water, not as much energy as looking out on the sea, but so big you don't see the other side. How many people in the world actually have seen this view? Midwesterners take it for granted, but it's a very rare sight. And maybe if you're more familiar with the northern lakes, you see something that's a little bit richer, more interesting, like Lake Superior. It doesn't really matter. It may just be that beach you like to go to every summer. The Great Lakes really touch our soul, and it's an incredible gift shared between Canada and the United States, shared between 8 states and 2 provinces, shared between over 130 Indian reserves, and maybe over 15,000 towns and cities. I bet you didn't imagine in that brief vacation an image like this, where we've used the Great Lakes, especially in the last 2 centuries, to really support our carbon-based industries, most of which are leaving the Midwest cities. Or I bet you didn't imagine how cities meet the lakes with their sanitary sewer overflows that only work when there's a big storm surge. Or what happens to Lake Erie after a major storm event, where you see in light colors in this image all of the runoff coming from agricultural fields and how it affects a full Great Lake with nutrients or pesticides going into the water. And when you do drink that tap water, if you're in the Great Lakes area and you're getting tap water as opposed to bottled water, do you think about what's in that glass of water? The pharmaceutical traces or the bacteria or the chemicals? And we have a border that I'd like you to forget, but right now that border is a tremendous division between thinking about these lakes holistically, because that international border runs between almost all of the lakes. So if we rise above all that and take a comprehensive view, we see all of these lakes stretching from a little frozen in the upper left-hand corner, Lake Nipigon, through Superior, Michigan, Huron, Erie in Ontario, and the St. Lawrence River. And we have to respect these tremendous resources of glacial water that's been left. We have to reinvent our relationship with them so that we're more in balance, and we have to renew the full ecological system that supports these and our relationship with the lakes. So a little bit higher up, this view of North America shows you the watersheds, and basically all the water in North America drains to the oceans, except for one little area. And this little area in green is the basin of the Great Lakes, and this is like a large valley. And the water that falls here in rain flows to these lakes, and these lakes are not connected to most of the major rivers in the United States or Canada. That's the area we've been looking at, an ecological area, the watershed that supports the Great Lakes. It's big. You can lay it over all of Europe, from London all the way to Warsaw, Poland, and down to Marseille. If you compare it to a European Union, maybe there's an agreement between Canada and the United States to have special rules here, reduced carbon emissions, transportation policies, energy strategies, ways to return more water to the lakes. If we just measure the waterfront, the intricate waterfront of all the Great Lakes, we can stretch from Chicago to Perth, Australia with 11,000 miles of waterfront. So it's not just the water I'm talking about, it's the uniqueness of this incredible resource that if you don't live close to the Great Lakes, it's for some reason off your radar screen. So we have been collaborating with many people in a complete pro bono basis on what we want in this discussion, and what we're calling for is a vision, a collective vision between two countries that could really be a demonstration to the world about how nations come together to solve larger environmental problems. So I have, I think, 10 points that would be chapters in this vision. And the first is a no-brainer, that the cities that sit on these lakes and have relied on these lakes for industry have a better relationship. We have greener cities on these Great Lakes, so more renewable energy, smarter infrastructure systems, ways to retain and clean our stormwater, ways to return water back to the lakes that is clean. Cities need food, energy, and goods to survive. And most cities today take all that in, use it, and it becomes waste. If we could replace the energy with renewable energy and find ways to recycle food and goods, we would have less waste. The Midwest cities, including Minneapolis, are on a power grid that's really terrible. We all have a huge carbon footprint because most of our power comes from coal-burning power plants. If you compared your carbon footprint to a New Yorker, who I'm sure doesn't walk around thinking he or she is green, they are much greener because their power that's supplied to their cities is based on other sources besides coal. The same with the West Coast, much cleaner than the Midwest. The second idea is if the Canadian National Park Service and the United States National Park Service come together about an idea that's bigger than a national park. We take the whole watershed, including all the cities, all the towns and villages, all the industry, and we put it in a park. And this park is unique. We all learn to live with different rules of the game, that we can be a bit cleaner, we can act a bit more responsible because we are in this Great Lakes Park. There's a great amount of public land around the lakes today, mostly in Canada. The third idea is great minds and Great Lakes, getting all the academic institutions around the Great Lakes, and there are many, to enter into a global classrooms idea so that we can connect to young, bright minds and the conversation about the lakes and engage people, raise their awareness about this valuable resource and how we can live more in balance with them. The fourth is about the water itself and water quality. Blue, we say, is the new green. We want it to be drinkable and swimmable, but we also want it to support habitats. Today, that's the biggest challenge, is really that the water quality continues to diminish. And it's not just for us. We need to also know how to conserve water so that we have water for the other people that need water or the other things that need water. Tapping renewable energy so our cities can be greener. The red areas show some of the highest concentrations of wind in the United States and Canada are over these lakes. I don't know if that means we put windmills on the lakes, but we should at least have an energy plan. The United States does not have a comprehensive energy strategy. Neither does Canada. Together, we could have one for the Great Lakes area. Achieving mobility, if we could talk about linking Minneapolis to Chicago and Chicago to Toronto, forgetting again a border, linking the major metropolitan areas together with not just airplanes and short-haul flights, but this remarkable technology that's exploding in Asia called a high-speed train, electric trains, so we can generate that power from many sources. It's emitting very little carbon emissions. It's moving at 240 miles an hour, and we could get from Chicago to Toronto in 3 hours. It usually takes an hour to get from downtown Chicago to O'Hare Airport. We could get to Toronto in 3 hours. It would open up the airports for more long-haul flights, and the short-haul flights would be diminished because people are using a clean form of transit. In the 50s, we built the interstate highway system. We should be able to build a high-speed rail system. The Midwest is becoming, in many ways, a great leader in climate change policy and technology. To become an incubator basin for high technology, green technology, makes a lot of sense here in the Midwest. We have water to use in this industry if that water could be returned to the lakes clean. Another subject that I think fits into this vision in some way is learning how to grow food locally. In the Midwest, we have a great collection of organic farms, especially in Michigan, Wisconsin. A lot of organic farming. But the average tomato, as you may all know, the average tomato in the United States travels between 1,200 and 2,000 miles from its farm, its field where it was grown, and the table that it's going to be eaten at. 2,000 miles. If we could emphasize growing more responsibly, raising foods that are locally grown and delivered to our table within 100 miles, think how much carbon we would save. And maybe we would be growing the right kind of foods as opposed to just large fields of soybeans and feed corn. Rediscovering our lakes is very important for all of us to understand these lakes and how rich they are. So increasing the tourism industry around the lakes, getting people on the water, is very important. And the last principle in this vision is really one of celebrating our culture. Many peoples, one water, foreign neighbors, sensible friends, culturally rich and diverse communities, uniquely united by a fluid border. And the soul for all of these communities is really this lake system. So we have started this conversation with many people both in Canada and the United States. Tomorrow in Milwaukee, we're actually with the Great Lakes Cities and St. Lawrence River Initiative group, which is an international collection of mayors of cities on the Great Lakes. They are actually discussing and voting on a resolution calling for a comprehensive vision for the Great Lakes. I think it's an important subject. It's one that for some reason, either it's because it's on a border, or it's so big it's hard to comprehend. It hasn't been on many people's radar screens, and yet it's so critically important. as we continue to grow on this planet, and cities are going to be really fighting for water in this century. So I think this is a green century. It's a time for very important collaborative actions. And this is a perfect case study for two nations coming together around one vision, one plan, to really show the world that we can live differently and be closer in balance with nature. Thank you.